Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're not too sleepy. I know it's just a little bit after lunch. It's that time where the digestion is starting to kick in. But I'm going to try and keep you awake with some useful tips for you who are using JIRA Service Desk and show you how you can get more out of JIRA Service Desk, get more productive with JIRA Service Desk. So first of all, I'm Lucas. I work for Valiantis. We're one of the Atlassian partners, we're in Europe and in North America. One of the things we have a great focus on is JIRA Service Desk and IT Service Management. In fact, you might know us as the company who built Vertigo SLA, which was later on acquired by Atlassian to provide the SLA technology in JIRA Service Desk. Today, I'm going to speak with you on 4 topics. It was quite hard for me to choose which ones to talk about because there's so many I wanted to share. But I think these ones are going to be useful. We're going to talk about how to do proper incident categorization in JIRA Service Desk, how to make the dynamic, and then we're going to look at some productivity tips for your agents. First of all, what do I mean by incident categorization? Well, one of our customers, a large European government agency, told us what they want is when a user raises an incident, they want to know what system and what version of that system it's affecting so that they can route it properly, so that they can report properly. Not only that, but they want the user to only be able to select the systems that they have access to, that they are allowed to see. And how do we do that? Well, we use a very useful plugin called Insight from a company called JIRA. It's mostly used for IT asset management in JIRA, but it's got a lot of other useful uses. You can use it to track any kind of objects, chairs, shoes, laptops, servers, applications. And here we're going to use it to track the incident categories. So we're going to first create what we call an object schema, which is like a family of objects. And we're going to call that the categorization schema. Now we've got our schema, we're going to create a couple of fields. The first one we're going to call our system field. That's to track what system the incident is affecting. And secondly, we're going to create a version field so that we can track what version is affected. And once we've done that, we're going to link the systems with the versions. And then we're going to link all that to the users who are accessing those systems or accessing those versions of those systems so that we can have a security and only those users can see the systems that they have access to. So what does that look like in practice? This is what I see as customer A when I open the customer portal. I've selected the system that's impacting me, and I can then select the versions of that system. But if I log in as another customer, I will see completely different values displayed in that field. So it's dynamic. It's really useful, first of all, for security, because you don't want everyone to be able to select every system, every version. But also for usability, so that you don't have a huge list of applications and systems to select from. For me, it's very useful also because you don't have to be the JIRA system administrator to manage the values in those select lists. And that's one of the difficult things in JIRA sometimes is when those values are quite dynamic, they're changing quite often, you don't want the admin to be always going in there to update them. And here with Insight, you can delegate that to some specific users in your organization to go and update those fields just with group permissions. Next, I want to show how we can make the portal a bit more dynamic. It's quite similar actually to our to the previous topic in that we want to have a display that's more dynamic. We want to have more security. We want to control what people can or cannot see. In this case, the customer was a very big insurance company, and they're using JIRA Service Desk to manage change requests, among many other things. But they don't want anyone to be able to raise a change request on the portal. They don't want the receptionist to be able to request a change on a critical brokerage system, for example. So how do we prevent that? Here, we're using a small add-on called Extensions for JIRA Service Desk. It's very useful for this sort of purpose. What you need, you just define some groups. Here, I've created a group called Business Managers, and then you're going to add some users to that group. And then you just add some security in the configuration panel of extensions for JIRA Service Desk. And we'll see here, we can see the issue type, the request type that I want to restrict to only that group of users. So here I'm saying that the change request type is going to be restricted to only the business managers group. How does that look in the portal? This is what I see as a standard end user. This is perhaps what the receptionist would see when they open JIRA Service Desk. But that's what I would see as a business manager. I will have a different list of items available to me, a different list of options. So that makes the portal a lot more dynamic. We have some examples where we have implemented JIRA Service Desk to manage HR processes, where people are asking questions about payroll or asking to update their personal details. But we also have managers who are logging employee appraisals, and you don't want anyone to be able to see these types of requests, only perhaps certain groups of people. And so there's other applications beyond IT as well. Next, let's have a look at some of the security and performance, how we can make our agents more productive. Here we're going to use some templates and canned responses to help our agents work faster. I mean, I used to work as a customer service agent, and the first thing I did is create my own library of templates to deal with those repetitive requests that we get all the time. One of our customers here was a luxury fashion label. What they had is they have shops all around the world, and in the shops they have shop assistants. They also have warehouse staff, and they will log a lot of quite basic requests, password resets, quite simple user questions. And they're quite repetitive, and they wanted to be able to respond to these much faster. How can we do that? Templates, of course, are the solution. Here we can use a plugin that's quite handy called Templates for JIRA. In this example, we have a customer creating a ticket asking, how can I add a new user in Active Directory? Can you do that for me? If I have defined already some templates which match this type of question, I can just select that template in my select list, and with just one click, it will do a whole bunch of actions for me. So it will update the status, perhaps mark it as resolved with the right resolution status. It will update a whole bunch of fields, set the priority, set some of the components, some of the labels, and it will even add a comment with a reply. So in one click, I've basically done all these actions which would require me to do several clicks and update several fields. So it doesn't work for every type of request, but for those request types which are quite repetitive, that you get quite often, it does cut through some of the grind of doing those tickets in the backlog. Another subject that's close to my heart is task automation. And a lot of IT managers now want to achieve more task automation, want to automate a lot of those repetitive tasks proactively as well. There's a very good example for that. It's employee onboarding. It's a common pain in every organization. It's one of those that was raised by one of our customers here. It's a company that makes software for hospitals. And they're always onboarding new staff. They're also always onboarding staff from the hospitals. And there's a lot of rotation. There's a lot of contractual staff. It was actually a big pain for them. And what they wanted is to be able to create and assign all the onboarding tasks for their new employees in just one operation. So, in JIRA, you can create a task to track your new onboarding, your new employees that are coming in. But here, we also wanted to track all the subtasks which are consequences of this. So, creating, giving them access to email, giving them access to the building, to facilities, setting them up in the payroll for some of them, setting them up in the HR system. And all these tasks have to be carried out by various people. So if you just have one workflow in JIRA, it can be quite complex to model all these tasks and subtasks that are supposed to be done by various people concurrently. A workflow is quite linear. But what you can do is you can have all this created as subtasks of a parent task. Let me show how we do that. We use a plugin called Exoset. It's one of our plugins, actually. And in Exoset, we create an operation button. So what it's going to be, essentially, is it's going to be a button on the JIRA issue UI. And we're going to call that new employee tasks. And following that, okay, it's not showing what I want. Okay, so that's our button. And then following that, we're going to add a field mapping, because once we have that button that's going to create all these subtasks, we also want to define what values we want to import from the parent task to all the subtasks. Perhaps we're going to have some information about the employee, what's their full name, what's their address, who is their manager, this sort of thing. And we want to push that to all the subtasks that are going to be assigned to the various people responsible for carrying them out. And with the field mapping, we can define those. We might import some of them for some of the subtasks, but not all of them. And one thing that's good to know as well is you can have this via button, but you can also trigger this action via transition. So if you have a transition which is add new employee and then approve, on that approve transition, you can trigger the creation of all these subtasks. This is what it looks like here on the UI. You can see that new button we've added called New Employee Tasks. You can see that on the JIRA request. And once I click that button, I can see in this example 4 subtasks being created. These subtasks can then be assigned automatically to the right stakeholders, to the HR manager, to the IT manager, to the finance team. And I can follow the resolution in one single screen. I can also mark them as done directly from the main screen, which is quite handy. This also is very useful in other contexts. One of them that I especially think of is task approval matrix. So if you have complex change management processes, where you need a lot of levels of approval from various stakeholders around the company, you can use exactly the same principle to trigger these approval subtasks, have them assigned automatically to those approvers, and you can define that beforehand, you can define that with the mapping, and then you can follow how the approval is progressing and who you need to chase, which approval is missing, which approval has been provided, and it can be, those subtasks can have a very simple workflow, where it's just open and approved or rejected. But that's very useful when you want to have concurrent actions being carried out, as opposed to just a linear workflow in JIRA. Another example of how to use this that I actually apply very often is for problem management, or in general, for linking one process to another. For instance, we have an incident, and we identify that this incident is actually a problem, and we want to escalate it as a problem. You could just have a button that says escalate as a problem. Click on that button. It will create the problem record. It will import the data from the problem. It will link it back to the original incident. And you can then link all your other problems to that incident. It can also go beyond that and do some synchronization so that the problem can be synchronized with the incident. Let's say the problem gets marked as resolved, then all the linked incidents can be also marked as resolved in one go, which is something that we often see in a lot of companies where many users will raise incidents, we identify an underlying problem, and we want to have that visibility of the links between the incidents and the problem. Going back to one of the plugins we saw earlier, the Insight plugin, I showed how we can use it for incident categorization, but its main application, and I like to use it for this purpose, is CMDB. You can create a full asset library where you can track your services, your servers, your OSs, and so on, and create and define the relationships between themselves, so that when you create a change request against one of those objects, you can see what the impact is going to be, what objects are going to be affected, and you can view all the history of the changes against a specific object afterwards. So when you're doing problem investigation, that's very, very useful to be able to go back in time and see what happened. Beyond that, another thing we've done from time to time is providing customer reporting. So what do I mean by that? In JIRA Service Desk, your users, your end users, your customers probably only have access to your portal. So they can't see everything. They can see their tickets, but they might not have access to reports about what's being done on their tickets. But you might want to provide some charts to them. You might want to give them an overview of all the change requests that have been logged by their company, or who are the people who create the most tickets in their organization, or what are how many tickets are open versus closed. The kind of stuff that you get from a JIRA dashboard, actually, but they don't have access to that dashboard. And you don't want to give them access to the full JIRA anyway. You just want them to have access to the portal. What we do is we leverage the knowledge base in Confluence for that. Because in Confluence, you can embed gadgets from JIRA dashboards. So you can create a little customer dashboard in JIRA, embed those gadgets in a Confluence page, and then that Confluence page is accessible to your customers in the knowledge base, actually, and they can then view some reports. It's just the dashboard reports, but they're still very, very useful. You can have lists of JIRA issues. You can have the results of a filter. You can have some pie charts. You can show them already quite a lot of value. And in general, to be honest, your end users, your customers will not expect huge amount of advanced reporting if they are just using the portal. Another one I like to use and I find useful is a product called Canned Responses. It's a little bit similar to the templates we saw earlier, but this one only works for responses to tickets. So when you're writing a customer reply, a comment, if you're looking at just accelerating that process of writing replies, you can have what this plugin does is it adds a little option. It's a little bit like in Gmail. If you use canned responses in Gmail, you can access a library of templates and canned responses that gets inserted into your email. It works in very much the same way. You select a canned response from either global templates or a list of templates that you have defined. And it gets pasted into the response form. You can even have some tags where perhaps the customer name or your name is filled dynamically in there. And it's quite useful again for those common answers like have you tried turning it off and on again, or it's a classic one, or is it? Are you sure it's like this? Can you give me more detail? Can you give me a screenshot? These kind of things that you ask all the time during an investigation, or even just thanking the customer or chasing a customer. How has this been going? Has it resolved your problem? This come in a lot, and just copying and pasting that is just a little bit time-consuming. Writing it is a bit time-consuming. Here, the canned responses help you a lot. And the fact that you can define your own as an agent is very handy. I know as an agent, I always wanted to have my own slightly customized canned responses. One last thing that I really like as well is allowing your customers to close their own tickets. In the portal, I think many companies work in a model where tickets are marked as resolved by the service team, but they require a confirmation from the requester, and when they confirmed it's resolved, the ticket is marked as closed. This can be done, you could ask your requester to write back a comment to say, yes, indeed, I am happy, and then you go back to it and you close it yourself. But what about just giving them the ability to close the ticket yourself once they're happy? Or even to cancel a ticket if they've self-solved, which hopefully would happen with thanks to the knowledge base. With the extensions plugin that we saw earlier, we can do that. We can give them in the portal the option to close their ticket, the option to cancel their ticket. And beyond that, if you're doing change management, you can give them the option to approve, for example, with just one click, as opposed to maybe writing a comment that says, okay, I've approved this, and then you need to go back and mark this as approved, or giving them the full access to JIRA, which, when you're doing approvals, often you will have business users in JIRA. You might not want to give them the full JIRA access. You just want to give them a simple view where you can just say, that's okay, I approve this. And the portal is perfect for this, just giving them approve, reject option. That's my presentation done, but I know for a lot of things I've gone quite quickly and it's quite high level, so I'm very happy to take any questions from you guys. If you want me to detail something a bit more, or I'll go back to one of the subjects I described.
So actually we'll be answering questions in the mobile app, so thank you for your questions so far. The first question is, when you're using the Excel set for the approval matrix, yes, do the various stakeholders within that matrix need a service desk license?
They would need, in this case, the tickets are assigned to them. So I would say yes, because they're going to be an assignee, and they're going to be saying approves, they're going to be acting on the workflow, so they're going to be acting as an agent. So they will need a license in that context. That said, you could also work around this with the extensions plugin, where you can allow people to approve ticket via the portal. In which case, what you would do is you would create a ticket via Exoset, and then you would mark that person who is supposed to approve as the requester, so that they see the ticket in their portal, and they can go to the portal and mark as approved.
Does the portal admin use a GUI to update a configuration item?
Does the portal admin use
a GUI to update a configuration item?
Yes, definitely. So it's all done with a user interface. In fact, all the plugins that I've shown work fully with the user interface. You don't go into a config file or anything like this. It's all drag and drop points from here to here. The field mapping, for example, in Exoset is just done with drag and drop.
In Exoset, is it possible to spawn different subtasks based on the system or a custom field value?
Yeah, I think you could trigger that automatically. So, for example, you can. So I imagine an example would be if a value is added, like is approval needed or not needed. If someone creates a ticket and says yes, we need approval, you can then make it conditional, so that the Exoset operation is only displayed in the context where that value is filled out. So we can use context in Exoset, and you can use conditions, so that the options are only displayed if perhaps a field value is met.
Can the CMDB track changes down to the app or a message queue level of assets?
There's no, as far as I know, there's no limit to the amount of levels you can go through in the CMDB. I've seen examples that were 10 deep in the hierarchy, so we had applications, and then we had modules, and then components, and then subcomponents, and so many levels. So you can go, in terms of the hierarchy, very, very deep, so that you can track levels as far deep as you want. So here in my example, I only had 2 levels. I had systems and versions, but you don't have to be limited to that. So you can go much deeper if you want to.
Can the content in these subtasks, so the new employee process, for example, can it be modified by other people other than a JIRA admin?
No. No, this is all managed by the JIRA admin, unfortunately. The tasks, once they've been created, can be edited by anybody, but the automation process, the spawning of all these subtasks, that's done in the JIRA admin interface.
For the extension plugin, will this work with only a JIRA Service Desk user, not a regular JIRA user?
So for the extensions plugin, I'm guessing it's referring to to being able to action tickets from the portal. And this, you don't need to be a JIRA user. You just have, if you're a JIRA Service Desk customer, so the unlimited free customers, you can view and you can action those actions on the portal. So you don't need to have a JIRA Service Desk agent license or a JIRA software license or a JIRA core license for that.
So we have to do one more question. How do you implement security for performance appraisal tracking so supervisor, employee, and HR can see it and report tracking status?
So that was, trying to remember how that was done actually, to have that hierarchical level, because when you have two levels it's quite straightforward, but when you have several levels of hierarchy, I think it's done with having uni groups, so you define groups that represent team. So Joe's team, and then Joe is the team leader of that team, Randy's team, and then Randy's the team leader of that team. And so you have that that security, so that each member of a team can only see the tickets for that team, or a team leader would only see tickets created for that sub team. Or you could use issue security. Probably saying something silly. I would need to double check that.
Okay. Well, actually, while he's double checking that, he's around here. He's at the Valiant Experts booth, so feel free to grab him at any point and talk to more of the experts. This is also available on SlideShare it should be there by tomorrow at the latest. So feel free to check the Summit website, and you'll see this entire deck in the SlideShare. So if you ever want to look up something, you can do that. And also we have Meet the Speakers tomorrow at Golden Gate A, so you can also talk to Lucas then. If you have any questions, ask me or him. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.